Hello, everyone, and welcome back to ThiccCast podcast. I'm your host, Molly Edwards, and today I've got Henry on the podcast with me. Do you want to introduce yourself to everyone? Just
Yeah, so my name's Henry, as you've said already. What I do, so I'm a coach and a bodybuilder, but more so a coach. I think we both are a bit like that, right? We coach first and then athlete after. The sort of people I coach. So what I would say is my sort of niche is competitive athletes is the main thing that I do, but I also do sort of what I call elite lifestyle, like the photo shoot transformations and stuff like that. But it's very physique orientated. Um, I've been prepping people now for I think about 3 years, so I'm relatively new to the game, but have done pretty well with the athletes that I've worked with, and I'm just looking to keep progressing that. In terms of what I'm doing, I'm actually on prep for my own show at the minute, so I am still being an athlete alongside that. So yeah, got a lot of stuff going on, but that's pretty much what I do.
nice. So we've been doing this about the same time then, really.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I've been doing it about 3 years, I think.
Yeah,
Okay. You just kind of do it, don't you?
it's the thing. I think the first. I'm sure you probably felt this the first few years. It's big imposter syndrome, right? When you're putting your first clients on stage and you're worried what other people are going to think. And I think I'm just starting. I don't know if it's the same with you. Just starting to get into a year now where I'm a bit more confident in doing it, and it feels a lot more relaxed and less stressful. And it's been a really nice year for that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know if you felt the same, was like that first overall win for me was the one where I was like, okay, because in my head, like I know the girls would look great and they'd place and they'd win, and then you'd be like, oh, maybe I just got lucky.
Yeah,
Just got lucky. And then you're like, oh, actually, like maybe I'm not just getting lucky, like maybe I'm actually doing all right.
yeah.
Like how I felt.
I think it's very easy when you're new to it to try and justify the good things that you've done as luck.
Yeah.
But then when you start to get a bit more consistent at it, you're like, oh, actually, I might actually be a little bit good at this.
Even that, or I'm very, very, very lucky.
Extremely lucky, yeah. But no, it's nice to sort of get over that hurdle. The first few years are very nerve-wracking, so I'm just sort of enjoying this season, to be honest.
Yeah. And did I read right the other day, the first time you put someone on stage, you hadn't been on stage yourself?
Yeah, that's right. So I actually prepped Aidan, who's my longest standing client, and we took him from complete amateur to second at the Brits, and we're going for a pro card run in PCA next year. First time I put him on stage, I'd never actually competed before, so I'm very grateful looking back that he trusted me with that job because I probably wouldn't have trusted someone who's never
I
prepped
would
me to
do
put me
it.
on stage. But yeah, he stuck with me, and that year I think he won 3 shows, come fifth in a PCA show, but he was still natty at that point. So it was like putting a men's physique guy in an untested fed. You're asking for a fifth place probably.
Yeah. I think that's it with I would say more so the men than the women. I feel like women can kind of hold their own in bikini.
Yep, for
Point,
sure.
but with the men, like it's just you've kind of got to do natural federations, I think, really, haven't you?
Yeah, it's with guys and it. I'm very open about PED usage, but there is simply a case of you can be like Aiden's very good structurally,
Mm.
but sometimes it comes down to people will just outdrug you, and that's competitive bodybuilding for males.
Yeah.
But obviously he's taken the leap, and he won't mind me saying that. And then I think we put on 40 pounds of stage weight in a year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I had actually put someone on stage before I competed, which was pretty cool.
And did you find though that when because obviously you were doing like bodybuilding but hadn't been on stage yet, is
Yeah.
it fair to say that? Um, did you find though that after you'd competed yourself that your kind of way you coached was different? Did you find you got a lot more empathy?
So funny enough, so like it's sort of a loose line there. So when Aidan got on stage, I was actually 4 weeks out from my show. So
Oh,
I was very much going through the process at the same time. And I think a lot of what I was sort of doing with A, so I had actually prepped before,
right, okay.
got to 4 days out of a show and pulled out. So I had done the diet, but like I got to the end of that prep I think I pulled from like £205 down to £150. And I just got to 4 days out. I was like, I'm just not happy with this. Like, I don't want to present it on stage because I just wasn't big enough. But
Do you know
that,
what?
I
It's a
think,
massive thing to admit, like, to just go, actually, I'm not doing it because I think so
yeah,
many people would have just done it anyway because you've gone so far,
yeah.
just, go on stage. What show was that going to be for?
So I was going to compete in juniors at PCA First Times Five, the Brum one, back in 2021. And condition was there, but just way overkilled it. And I put that down to it was actually just too much PD usage, too much exogenous thyroid, just tore away at the physique. But lessons learned. I think all of this stuff is stuff that you take on to your next preps and so on, and just improve from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting, though. I don't think I've. It's very rare you speak to someone that it's, unless it's like an illness or an injury, they were a
Yeah,
week out and broke their leg, like, well, you're going to pull out, aren't you?
yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting to hear, actually.
Yeah, I just didn't want to stand up there with something I wasn't 100% happy with. So
Yeah,
I'll just take a couple of years and give it another go.
yeah. Oh, that's wicked. And then you're happy.
Yeah, I was, I mean, are we ever 100% happy with what we present on stage?
Oh, I didn't think so.
It never happens, does it? There's always, I think at the time I was very happy with the look, and obviously I won that show. But looking back now, when I'm looking at pictures now going into my next prep, I'm like, don't actually like that look. There's little bits here because my glutes have been in more. These sort of things. But overall, it was a good showing, I think.
Yeah, nice. So do you think it changed much after you'd competed and stuff as well, or?
I think I've learned more over the years from prepping people than doing my own preps.
Okay.
Um, I think you build up an arsenal of tools as you prep other people and see things see things unfold, and like you pick up little bits from each person's prep, right? And then when you're faced with that challenge again, you can be more empathetic to it and stuff like that. So I think that I've learned more from that than my own bodybuilding.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I've always kind of thought that if you hadn't gone through it yourself, like you said, you were there pretty much.
Yeah,
Like it would be a hard thing to understand what someone's going through when you're
yeah,
really, really lean and you feel like absolute shit and you're saying like I'm tired. Oh, loads of bottles falling off the side. Um, and you're saying I'm tired. Like for some people, they might just be like, shut up, like just have a
yeah,
coffee. But it's different. It's not like I just need a coffee. It's like you're
yeah.
fucked.
Yeah, you can understand because I don't think there's many scenarios where you can feel that other than prep. Like if you are close to legit condition, it's going to feel rough. I
Yeah.
don't. If you've never felt it as a coach, you can't be in a position to offer advice. I don't think.
No, because I you just can be like, oh, just push through, like what you are going on about, like just being a wimp. Like it's
Yeah,
not like that. It's really fucking horrible.
yeah,
So no, that's pretty interesting. Um, so some of the things that we wanted to talk about then is so you coach both male and female. Let's just go back a second. You coach
yeah,
both male and female athletes. Obviously, you're just talking about men's physique guy there, but you do coach women as well. And obviously, this podcast, if I'm honest, is mainly listened to by women. You
yeah,
get a couple blokes as well, but it is more women's
yeah.
side. So you do coach both, and do you find that I only coach women? So I don't. I've helped out men, I've PT'd men, all that, but I don't prep men.
Yeah.
So do you find that there's quite a big difference between the two, or not really?
There is the main basis of what prep is with the similarities, like the basic, you need to diet hard, that sort of stuff. I think with how I approach coaching is slightly different. I think guys are a lot harder to get information out of on prep, which can sometimes lead to not knowing the full story. Where I think my female athletes are a lot better at just keeping me in the loop with how things are going. I think I can have a better grips of how their day-to-day life is just because we communicate more. And obviously I'm just going off of what I've done. This isn't obviously the case for every single athlete in the world, but what I've
Right.
noticed. Um, but when it comes to it comes down to it, prep right. I think there's probably more similarities than differences. Obviously, you've got the main ones like calories are more than likely going to be lower for female athletes than males. But outside of that, I just think there's more similarities than differences in how you prep. I'm trying to think of a few differences, but realistically, I don't think there is a huge amount. It's just getting someone in condition relative to their criteria, um,
Yeah,
and just especially with first timers, making sure their heads don't fall off along the way. I think that's the biggest part of our job, right? Isn't
yeah,
so much the like managing calories and stuff. I think it's more just keeping people in a good headspace as they move through the process.
yeah, absolutely. I do think actually, and this would be interesting to hear your take on it, but like I think people think women are going to be like harder in that respect because of like the hormonal changes and stuff.
Yeah,
Obviously, that can affect your mood. And I know that again, that's very person,
yeah,
like some women you wouldn't even really notice it. Whereas you've got women like me that I go fucking crazy the week
yeah,
on. I'm like, I can't compete. I'm fat. This is
yeah,
and you've got to like, but actually, I think that men can be just as bad as that.
yeah. I mean, even me as an individual, I am terrible around the back end of prep. I
Yeah.
can tell you how many times I tell myself, oh, I'm just not going to do this show. Like I look terrible. It's like, but that's, I think our job as a coach is to almost be the person to just calm it down. Like we never need to come across panicky to athletes.
Yeah.
They come to us to calm them down, right? And I couldn't genuinely, I think it's just so person dependent. I couldn't say whether that's different to male to female. I think everyone has those periods over prep where they just lose their head.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I think like you're right, it's very much, I don't know if you feel like this, but you've got to try and be that calm.
Yeah,
I often feel like, when they say like a duck in water,
yeah,
on the surface, the clients will be like, oh, you're so calm. And I'm like, I've not eaten all day. I'm very stressed. I'm purely running on caffeine, but I am so calm.
yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, we've probably both had that show days. You know, when something like there's always those times where you maybe do a morning check-in and the look's not exactly where you want it, and you're trying to make manipulations to bring it to the point you want it, and you're like, but one thing do not do is make it look like you're stressed. Like, just do not panic in front of your athlete. I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned is no matter what you are as a coach, you are the calm, and you have to keep that role.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And it can be really hard at times. Like you said, you've got to try and like
Yeah,
act potentially. But even if it's looking good, like, I then get stressed if it looks good as well, because I'm like, oh, she looks really good. And that stresses me out because I'm like,
yeah,
what if something suddenly goes wrong?
yeah.
Not that it ever has, but it's just that thing in the back of your head, like, what if all of a sudden she comes down with food poisoning? Like, you don't know.
There's so many questions, especially in peak week, that run through my head.
Yeah,
Like just making because you want it as I think as coaches. I don't think people may realize this as much, but we're with the athlete throughout the whole prep. So when it comes to it, it means as much to us as it does to them. And you're like, I want them to have a good day. I want them to place well. I want all of those things. You've got that built up
yeah,
as well as they do. And I have some athletes who are probably calmer than me on show day.
yeah.
Do you have any of those athletes who are just like ridiculously chilled? And I'm like, how are you doing this?
So one of my girls last year, I mean, she was just very chilled anyway. But it was just like walk in the room and she was just like asleep on the sofa.
Great, isn't it? You can want more of that though, as a coach, to see that you're like, this is exactly where we need you at this point.
Yeah, but then it was like, do I wake her up and tell her that I need to have a look at her because I think she might need more food, or do I just leave her snoozing on the sofa?
Yeah, one of my lads, Jay, who's competed recently, I don't know anyone who enjoys show day as much as him as an athlete. It's like he's in his element. I spend more time just trying to get him to sit still because he's so excited, but there's not an ounce of anxiety or fear. He's just genuinely just enjoying the day, and it's great. It's really, really good.
Yeah, I think that is nice. I think that's also a testament to you as a coach because I think it's bringing the pressure off them. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of competitors can feel a lot of pressure on them, whether that's from social media, whether that's because they have coaching businesses or
yeah,
themselves. They can feel, I had a conversation with my friend the other day and she was like, oh, I didn't place where I wanted to, and now I'm worried that's going to affect my business. And I was like, mate, no one's going to care.
The
Like,
way I always look at it, right, and one thing I do, and I've always made the point of doing, is if one of my athletes tries to have a conversation with me about placings, I won't entertain that.
yeah,
I don't want to talk to them about how I think they're going to do. Um, if they say to me, "I want to win this show," I go, "Well, let's not go in with that, Mike, because you're always setting yourself up for anxiety around it." And unless the way what I always say, unless you are Miss Olympia, at
mm,
some point you're going to run into a better bodybuilder than you at a
yeah,
show somewhere, and you're going to get beaten. It's the game that we're in. So for me to put pressure on clients for placings when I don't even know who's doing their shows is setting themselves up to feel like they've let me down, or I don't want that running through anyone's head.
no, completely. I completely agree with you there. I think that's the way it kind of should be. And like you get that internal excitement.
Yeah,
You know, when you've got an athlete and they are like on point and you're like, they're probably going to win this. And you look around and you're like, I don't see anyone better than them.
yeah,
That internal excitement, but you
yeah,
kind of don't want to say anything because I always think like you don't know who's just hiding. Like you always have like
yeah,
a random athlete that's like just hidden in a cupboard somewhere that pops out on stage, right?
yeah,
You don't know if that's going to happen. They're going to be in their class and better. You just have that internal excitement.
yeah,
Pretend it's not there. Everything is fine.
yeah. Have you ever had it on the flip side when you're at a show and your athlete sees another girl and they're like, and they just lose their head, and you're like, oh, I don't think they're in your class, and you just make it up on the spot. You're like, no, they're not in your class, just hoping they're not.
Yeah, yeah. I've had that, and you're just like, it's normally when they go to TAM and they're like,
Yeah,
this person, I've seen this person. I'm like, you don't even have. They're like, oh, they're massive. I'm like, if they're massive, they might not even be in bikini. They might be in figure,
yeah,
and they look like this, and I'm like, okay, cool. It's
yeah.
they lose their head or they send you photos. But I always think like Instagram and stuff like it never shows you like what they actually look like.
No,
I was sent
I've seen it. Even like both ways round. I've seen someone on Instagram. I'm like, oh, they look really good, and they come on stage. I'm like, doesn't really represent. And then I've seen it on the flip. You see someone on Instagram all year, and you're like, they're okay, and they come and win the overall, and you're like, you did not look like that last week when you posted a physique update.
But I think so. I actually think with social media, you have people that will only post photos when they look great and potentially edit them. Uh,
Yeah,
so then people think, oh, they look really good. Because I've seen that with people. I've seen photos where girls have sent them to me and they're like, oh, they're in my class. I'm like, oh shit, they look quite good. They've come up on stage and they've literally come last. They look awful.
yeah,
They've posted the photos where they look great.
yeah,
But then, like you said, also, you don't see it, but I know there's people that won't post photos of them like really looking good on social media because they don't want the pressure from it, so they just don't, or they will post photos like from 4 weeks ago or something.
yeah,
So you think that's what they're looking like now. So you think, oh, maybe they're a little bit soft, they've got a little bit more to come off, whatever. But they're actually 4 weeks out there. They weren't.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just trying to stay off Instagram. I try and really push that on my athletes is when you get close to the show, don't do the typical, oh, I'm going to try and find out who, looking on the tags for PCA of who's doing the show at the weekend and stuff like that. And we've all done it. We've all been there, haven't we? I had it for my first show, and there was this one guy, right, and he was like 10 weeks out, and his glutes were in already. I was
Yeah.
like, it's going to kill me. Got to about, so I was stressing about this for about 5 weeks. About 5 weeks out from the show, he pulled out. So I was like, I just spent 5 weeks stressing. He's not even going to be there.
No, and that's the thing. Like people do change their shows and stuff.
Yeah,
Like last year I didn't do half the shows I was going to do. People change it around. People have an idea in their head, or they just aim for like a couple shows. They're like, oh, maybe I'll do this, or I'll do that, or I'll do that, depending on how I'm looking, what class I'm going to fit in best, things like that. So I don't know. It's just said it's staying off social media. So when you are peaking, then what would we're going to talk about peak weeks a little bit here.
yeah.
What do you think makes a good peak week?
I'm going to go with the really obvious one to start. Be in shape. Like, you cannot peak a physique that still has body fat. I think that's where a lot of peaks go wrong is that they just haven't missed the mark with condition to start. and then you're trying to load, you're trying to dry off, and then I think people trying to aggressively dry off when what they're actually looking to achieve is like what's left is body fat. You're not pulling fluid. That's still like adipose tissue to come off. What so that's the first thing. Make sure that the athlete's in shape. I think peak week itself starts a little bit earlier than the week. I
Yeah.
think for an effective and responsive peak week, you need to be working your way towards some sort of homeostasis and pulling out of a deficit from probably 2.5 weeks out. If you've phased the prep right, and you should be nailing condition at about 3 weeks out, and then spending a bit of time before peaking, alleviating stress. So like realistically, the goal of going into peak week right is you want to be in a low stress environment. Physiques respond better to lesser stress when lesser stress is present. So I'll usually spend about a week and a half pulling back on expenditure to lowering step count and cardio. Usually like to have cardio completely out by about 10 days out. Um, and then I keep peaks very simple. I think a lot of the issues people have when they're peaking is they start to do random things that are very unpredictable. What I'll usually do is a period of fat loading. And I'm not big on pushing an aggressive fat load. It won't be anything too crazy. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I very much linear load into shows. So I'm not a fan of the heavy backloads. And what that is to explain to people listening. So what a backload is when sort of an athlete's like 2 or 3 days out from a show, and you just throw loads of carbs at them, and then sort of essentially hope for the best at that point, right? I'm a big believer. I usually start, say, if the show's on Saturday, I'll start trickling carbs in at about Tuesday, and I'll just add a little bit more to their baseline each and every day until I get to a point. I'm like, I really like this look in terms of the combination of fullness and composition, and we know at the back end of peak week we can dry off a little bit of extracellular fluid, and happy to put that on stage. So as I move through the week, I find the look, and then once I found that look, I essentially just replicate what we've done that day each day until show day. Um, Basically, what constitutes of a good peak week is removing as much unpredictability as possible.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be going to sleep the night before a show going, I hope I wake up on the money tomorrow. You should know that by what you've done all week, that you know what you're going to wake up in terms of a rough ballpark for body weight and where that composition is going to be. And then it's just a case of just get bridging the 6 or 7 hours from wake to stage with just some fluid and sodium, right?
And go for a good poo. That,
Yeah,
that's my biggest thing. I always like I'll show you, I'm like, make sure you've been for a good poo.
yeah. That's always a good sign. I know it probably sounds crazy, but like it's a sign that GI is still functioning well.
Yeah, like, I swear down, this is like my I always sound like really weird, but I'm like, you need to be pooing.
Yeah.
That in your stomach.
Yeah, and when it comes to peaks, I'm sure you've heard of some of the crazy ones, right? Of just like ridiculously unpredictable things. The one that really bugs me is the glass of red wine before the night before. I don't really get that one, but you hear it a lot still going on.
So what it is, it was a really years ago, they drink alcohol
Yeah,
before a show to dry out. Uh,
yeah,
Supposedly alcohol would dehydrate you and then you'd wake up the next day really dry.
yeah,
Um, but I think now we've realised that doesn't really work. I think people still do it now as a thing of like if they're not going to sleep.
yeah, yeah. It's the only thing I think then is like for one, you're dehydrated. Two,
Yeah.
you haven't drunk alcohol in how many months? Do you really want to be getting on stage with a banging headache?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Like it doesn't sound fun at all to me.
No, I'm not I mean, I don't drink myself at all, but I'm not a big fan of alcohol, if I'm honest. But I think that's where it comes from. And like I remember when I first started competing, people were pissed backstage. Like
Yeah,
just like one or two people, like a lot of people would be drunk on show day.
yeah. The craziest one I heard, um, and this was at Tanning for Aidan's first show, the first ever show I went to. And
Yeah.
there was an athlete there, and this was for UKUP Southern, one of those shows. And I was just sort of, as you're at TAN, you just chat to other athletes when you're coaching while you're waiting for whoever you're with to come out.
Yeah.
We said, "Oh, what are you doing for the rest of the evening to this lady that was competing, right?" She was going to Weatherspoons for steak, chips, and a few drinks. I was like, "Really? Like,
That's
the night before the show?"
that's really common. But I always think like red meat doesn't digest very well.
Well, I don't use too much protein in peak week. The only time I will through the phase where we're drying out a little bit because obviously protein does promote diuresis, right? But throughout the most of peak week, I don't really have protein in. I have like a small amount in, but throughout peak week, you're not damaging muscle. Like you're doing pump workouts.
No.
Just save some of those calories for the carbohydrates and fats that you're manipulating more than anything. So I do run relatively low protein in that week anyway. So I couldn't imagine a massive steak and chips to be great, especially when the female categories are very heavy on midsection
Yeah,
control.
that's it. And that's why I've never understood the steak, but like I can understand the theory behind the chips, like carbs, salt, cool.
Yeah,
But this steak, as much as I love a steak, I don't really get it if I'm honest.
yeah, no,
That's
it's
a very
not.
old school approach, isn't it?
It's how can I put it? You know that saying, like, if you throw enough shit, some will stick.
Yeah.
That's how I think people are winging these peaks.
Yeah, I do think that I think there's a lot of people though that will go out. So we did a show in Italy last year, and this guy said to
Yeah,
me, so my client, she's just holding water, and I think it was just from flying and she'd been ill. Just
yeah,
water. And this guy was like not even seen her. Like she was covered up. And he was like, oh, we went out for loads of food last night. We had burgers and chips and ice cream and all this stuff. And I was like, right, okay, that's good for you. And he was like, well, why didn't you do that? And I was like, because she looked like shit this morning.
yeah.
She's already holding water. Imagine if I shove a load of burger and chips and ice cream. She'd look even.
I've only used burger and fries on one athlete, and
Yeah,
it was very much the case of, as I said, with that throw enough shit, some might stick. Right, it was his last show of the season, and we was like, you know what, you're not too fussed about how you place here. This was for the British, um, and we was like, why don't we just try something different and just see if it works? So we did burger fries and we used some pharmaceutical directs. And funny enough, he actually placed second at the British because it actually did land. But normally I wouldn't risk something like that. If it's a show that really matters to them, I'm not going to do something wacky that's not really within my control. When you're firing a peak like that, you're handing it over to fate. You really are. It's either going to land on the money or the complete opposite.
exactly. And I just think, nah, I'd rather just, I know. And also, like you go out for burger and chips and whatever, especially in another country, you don't actually know how that food's going to digest with you.
No.
It's not like going to McDonald's and you have McDonald's all the time in off season. You know you can digest a Big Mac quite well.
Yeah.
You go to a restaurant you've never been before, like you don't know how your body's going to digest that. You might have an awful reaction to that, like whatever foods they put in, especially abroad where they use different
Yeah.
seasons, spices and stuff that what maybe we do. You don't know what's going to happen, and then your athletes like got some sort of food poisoning or
Yeah.
just awful GI issues because
So
of that.
that's another thing that I do when it comes to peak week. So I will not prep anyone on macros.
Right.
Um, and then when it comes to peak week, because I've done this, and this is from something I've done in the past, and it has backfired, is if you're prepping someone on macros, you get to peak week, you give them, right, have an extra 200 grams of carbs today. They'll do exactly what we've just said there. And I go, oh, what can I fit in that? And it's going to be something they haven't eaten for 20 weeks. And then you
Yeah.
get a message, my stomach is fucked. And you're
Yeah.
like, well, what have you eaten? And it'd be like, oh, Jaffa cakes. When was the last time you ate those? 40 weeks ago. Probably why your stomach's now fucked. So when I peak, it's very much, it will just be on foods that are known. Very much just really, it's just rice based foods.
Yeah.
Cream of rice, rice cakes. I will use some stuff with fructose in, so like fruits, jams. But yeah, it would be usually for I use jasmine rice, cream of rice, rice cakes. It's boring. It's not the most fancy peak. It's not going to have them super excited when they get the meal plan in the morning. But I don't care for excitement. I care for the look.
Exactly. And I completely agree. whatever you digest well, that's what we're peaking on.
Yeah,
If you digest well with rice, awesome. And most people do. You do get the odd person that like cannot eat rice.
yeah.
Most people are pretty good with, like you said, like rice-based things or potato-based things. Pretty
Yeah.
good.
The only one that I won't use, and I think some people don't haven't noticed this, is although there's foods that you can digest really well, when it comes to loading, you need to one thing I think needs to be accounted for is the fiber intake. So like some people can digest oats really well.
Yeah.
Like if you start ramping up the amount of oats they're having in peak week and that fiber intake is going sky high, like that's going to cause some digestive issues. So that's why I tend to stick towards like the rice and fruit based, is because we're obviously fruit has some fiber in, but like you're not going to be slamming 900 grams of fruit. It's just going to be like mixed berries and stuff here and there. Um, but yeah, like I'm very cautious that it might even be a case if someone's got an oatmeal, I'll add cream of rice to it and just mix it all together so that I'm not giving them that upshift in fiber.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that flavor-wise, but okay.
I wouldn't eat it personally, but you know what? It's actually quite common, like people mixing cream of rice and oats together. I didn't realize, but apparently it's really nice. But I don't even like cream of rice, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I always thought you were either like an oats person or a cream of rice person.
I'm very much on team oats. Cream of rice isn't a vibe, but I have to eat it twice a day. So,
Oh, that's not.
yeah, not fun.
I
Do what
think
you
you
have to.
have to learn how to make it the right way for you, though.
I think, yeah, there's so many of those like fancy videos, isn't there, online of how to make cream of rice right? And I just pour kettle water on it and hope for the best.
Probably where you're going wrong. Eating like baby food.
I had an athlete once years ago, and I got them on cream of rice, and it was only like the sort of first few weeks of coaching, and they messaged me about a week or two in, so I just really can't get on with this cream of rice stuff. I was like, that's fine. I was like, just out of curiosity, how you make it? I was doing it with cold water.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was just like wet sand. I was like, no, no, you actually have to like put warm it up. Yeah,
Yeah. No, the first time I had it, I brought two big tubs of it and I just didn't like it. And I
no,
ended it away. And then I ended up with some more that I think got given to me a couple of years later. And then I made it a different way and I was like, oh, actually, I quite like this. But the way I was making it to begin with, I think is how you make it. I was literally just putting kettle water on it and mixing it with a fork and then eating
yeah,
it. Disgusting.
that's literally how I do it. I just do it for speed, to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those that it can be really useful, and in off season as well when you can't get the food in, like you can
Yeah.
just drink it then.
Yeah, I do that sometimes to be honest in off season. You can drink like 100 grams of it. It's not the most ideal thing in the world drinking your food, but like there gets the point in off season where you're pushing and you're like needs must.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like it's one of them, isn't it? It's when it gets to a point and
Yeah.
and I think or you drink it, like just fucking drink it.
You just have to go through those little uncomfortable stages in off season to really push new areas. But yeah, going back to peaking, how do you do yours out of curiosity? Is it similar or
I'm a mix of kind of I don't like backloading, like you said. For me, it's like because I coach women, regardless of however you peak them, they're always like my midsection, I'm bloated.
yeah,
And you're looking and you're like, but you're not bloated. I had one of my girls check in this morning, she's like, I'm really bloated. And I was like, I literally looked at your thing and your midsection is really tight. But that's in their head, isn't it?
yeah,
Is always bloated. So I think backloading, like you said, is too much risk of GI issues, bloating, things like that. Um, Especially with women with like hormone issues as well. They can also then have issues with digestion and things. So I'm not really a big fan of that. So I either front load, or like you said, linear loading. But I've always called it like reverse dieting, so like kind of reversing into the
yeah,
shot.
essentially, yeah. I think there's so many names for each
Yeah,
thing. Um,
just
I
depends.
think touching on that backloading one that you said as well, I think one of not only are we trying to peak a physique, but we're trying to keep mental state in a good spot, right? So if you've got an athlete that's fluidy and bloated from eating a lot of food at one day out, cortisol through the roof, they're stressed, panicking, that's also going to impact the look. Where if you do what you said, where it's like you front load, they're going to have that at the beginning of the week, but then every day they're going to start to look better and drier and stuff, and that's going to be like positive reinforcement to.
Yeah. And I also think like, with like I said, like reverse dieting or front loading. either way, say you front load at the beginning, like you said, they then start to get
Yeah.
better through the week. But also, if then they start to flatten off, you just had a little bit more in.
Yeah, you just bump a few more rice cakes one day and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Going back to your thing, difference between male and females, I find female peaks a lot easier
Yeah.
because you're managing less food intake most times. With guys, you're going to be looking some days 1,000 grams of carbs, and it gives me a lot of anxiety putting 1,000 grams of carbs in someone on one day because a lot of mishap can happen there.
Yeah. I
With
mean, I
females, it's nice. It's
did
nice
obviously
and linear.
keep a guy before, but it was complete guesswork.
Yeah,
Because I was just like, you're an open bodybuilder. I coach bikini girls. A couple of
yeah.
girls, like,
And I think with female athletes, you have a little bit of wiggle room for fullness.
yeah,
You don't need to be bursting out the seams. With open guys, you need them. If they're not bursting, they're not winning.
yeah,
Um, so I do like. I think it's easier to find a look for a female, and also it's easier to hold a look,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which I do find those peaks a little bit easy. No, I wouldn't say easier, but less stressful.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, because I don't find it stressful like knowing what to do. I find it stressful like it's just that always that voice in the back of your head that's like, what if it goes wrong? That's what I find stressful and making sure that they're not stressed and they're okay.
Yeah,
That's the bit that I stress about. The bit that actually like 9 times out of 10 is never gonna happen.
yeah.
Um but yeah, I do find that a bit easier. I can't remember what I was gonna say then. Yeah.
When it comes, one thing that I do, and I don't know whether I've learned this over time, is when you're with your athletes throughout a peak, I'll never make a decision in front of them. I used to find that, like, when I did an in-person check-in,
Hmm.
or even like when it gets to the show and you're with them for the weekend, they'll pose for you and then they'll stand there and look and wait for what you want to do. And you're almost rushed on the spot sometimes. You make an adjustment or you tell them what to do. And then you think back, like, did I make the right call? So what I do is I get them to pose for me, take pictures, and then like send them on their way. I'll be like, I'll text you over what I want you to do. But I need to take 5 minutes to myself, look through the pictures, really like let it sink in what I've seen before I've actually sent something over, rather than just being like put in the hot seat, like, oh, what are we doing next? I just won't make those decisions in front of them anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me it also depends on who I'm coaching.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I've got some people that they've been doing it for a long, they've been competing for a long time. They're perhaps coaches as well themselves or whatever. So sometimes I find with them it's a lot more of a conversation
Yeah,
of like, okay, I feel like this. How are you feeling? And like they almost have like a little bit of input as well. Like, because I think some people, especially first timers, if I say like they'll be like, oh, I'm flat, and you're like, you're not flat. Like you're meant to be flat, whatever, but they'll just tell you they're flat because they don't feel big enough or whatever.
yeah,
When you've got girls that have been doing this a long time, and I say, I think you're looking a little bit flat. How are you feeling? They feel like, yeah, I feel a bit flat. And you know that they actually are feeling like that. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Then you can say, okay, cool. Like, I think maybe let's have a bit more carbs. Like, you finding these carbs are sitting well for you. Cool. Like, let's put that in, whatever. So I think it is a little bit dependent who you're working with. But
yeah,
no, I've always just kind of write it down, and then I'm like, right, let's do this, and I write it, talk them as I'm writing it. I think.
yeah. Yeah, I just the only reason I've done that is because I think sometimes in the past I've been on the spot, made a decision, and then sat back and thought, did I actually want to do that?
Yeah.
Sometimes I need a bit of headspace to like not have anyone around me speaking, just to really look over the pictures and just really mull over my decisions to make sure they're the right ones. But like
Yeah.
you said, with an athlete who's competed a few times before, you do have their data of what they've done in the past. And I
Yeah.
find as well when you're working with someone who's competed a few times before, if you come in and do something completely different than what they're used to,
Oh, they freak out.
they freak out. So sometimes you have to meet them in the middle, and it might not be exactly what you want to do, but you want to put just enough of your input in to get what you want out of it, but not go so far that they lose their head and go, I've never done that before. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Got to find a middle point. I think first timers are a lot easier because they don't know, they're very much happy with just go, I do what you say, tell me
Yeah.
what to do. And then you can have 100% reins over it. I've only started sort of realizing this now where I'm prepping people who have actually been prepped before. The majority of the last couple of years has all been first timers, so it's very much like I say, you get on with it, cool. And we're now I'm getting into those situations where it's more of a conversation of this is what I did last time, and I might be like, I really don't agree with that, but like if I tell them to completely flip that upside down, I feel like over time working with them, I'm going to earn their trust, and they're going to be more
Yeah.
inclined to allow me to take the reins. But you have to meet them where they are. If they're 20 shows deep and they've been doing it their way the whole time, they're not going to be willing to give you the full reins of that.
Yeah, although I think that does depend on the person. I've got going. She's been competing years longer than I have. She's prepped
Yeah,
herself, like she's had a few different people prep her. And I was a bit like, to begin with, I thought, oh, is she going to be a bit like, I'm going to do it this way? But
yeah,
actually, she is so chill.
yeah,
She's probably one of the easiest persons I've got to coach because she knows what it's like to prep. She's not like, oh, I feel like shit. Is this normally like, yeah, it's normal.
yeah,
She just gets on with it and everything, which is great. And when I kind of bring things up that I think like, am I going to be met with a bit of like resistance here?
yeah,
Like, yeah, that's cool. Like if you think that, like I really trust you, I'm
yeah.
like, okay, cool. But yeah, I do think like other times you get people and you're gonna have that a bit more. But do you find that's more for men than women, or?
Um, I can't say because the only people that I'm prepping currently who have competed before are all guys.
Okay, yeah.
So I haven't actually been met with a sit, but I think it's person dependent. I think you just read the room, don't you? I think you can sort of tell when they're a little bit dubious of what you're saying. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's probably plenty of athletes who competed before who are very happy to completely hand over the reins. But I try not to. I think every decision I make is trying my best not to stress someone out.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. Um, no, that's cool. And kind of going into, I don't know, is there anything else we can touch on with peak week?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered sort of the things that we're both relatively similar in what we do there, right?
Yeah, I don't think peak week is that difficult. I think that people make it sound like it's this really difficult, like magic thing.
Yeah,
It's not. It's
it's
just
not. It
about
really
getting there.
it's how people market, isn't it? I think it's all a more of a marketing thing. Like if it's something to talk about online, but Peak Week isn't as special. And I don't know whether you get first timers who come to you and they get really excited for Peak Week, like oh, we're going to be doing all the fancy stuff now, and that you send the plan, they're like, oh, it's not much different then, is it?
Put 10 grams extra rice today. Enjoy.
Yeah. No, yeah, we'll move on to the next topic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So let's go into like post show then. So, how's your approach to post show? What would you kind of recommend? Obviously, this is such a massive topic because
Yeah.
both physically and mentally, I think post show's really hard.
Yeah.
I think someone like myself that works with first time athletes, I think that you kind of it's really difficult because they're experiencing these things for the first time. When
Yeah.
you're someone that is, a more experienced athlete and you're working with them, they kind of know what to expect. And they
Yeah.
can kind of say to you already, like, I struggle with X, Y, and Z. So you're like, cool, I know that's going to come up. We can put something
Yeah.
in place. When you've got someone that's never gone for it before, you don't know what they're going to struggle with.
Yeah. I think you've got to be the first thing I think you need to do as a coach in post show is firstly try and start to get those conversations rolling about post show while you're still in prep. Sort of get them prepared for that. Then make sure they have their plan in place before the show season is even finished. I think leaving someone without an idea of what they're doing is a big no-no. And also, I think definitely the frequency of communication, I think, is where I think people can go wrong in post show. I think, like, by the end of prep, right, you're checking in daily with your coach.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, some coaches move to, oh, okay, you finish your show, we'll catch up next week.
Yeah.
The same way I sort of phase it in. So throughout contest prep, right, you start weekly check-ins, then it goes twice, 3 times a week. Is the same sort of routine I phase it out in. So
Yeah.
I'll still be having my athletes checking in daily for the first 2 weeks post show, and then we might move to every other day. Then it might be 3 times a week, um, and then usually all of my athletes are twice a week anyway. So then it sort of returns to that. But keeping up with communication. obviously setting those expectations before that this is going to be hard. I try and put it in my athlete's mind that prep doesn't end when your last show does. Like post show is an extension to your prep.
Yeah.
Um, I think that way it really does set the expectations that like, although prep is finished, it doesn't mean the you're out of the woods.
Yeah.
There's hormonal function that needs fixing. Um, Obviously, post show opens itself up to some like relationship with food issues. I think if you go completely crazy, I think it's very hard to pull that back in. Where what I tend to do is I try and get calories, their baseline calories up to a decent spot off the
Yeah.
get go. Allow for some time off plan, but sort of being mindful within that. I think you've got to balance a fine line of like you've got to remember our like as a coach what an ideal post show isn't for the athlete because I mean in an ideal world if if all your athletes were a robot, right, you'd have them on a baseline diet every day and reverse it out. It doesn't work like that. They want to catch up with friends, they want to catch up with family, they want to experience things that they haven't throughout prep, and they want to celebrate, and celebration includes food, drink for some, right? um so I think it's you're always on like a you're trying to find a line in the middle where we want them being productive. We don't want them, but we don't want them straying too far either side of. If we put too much restraint on them, I'm sure you've probably seen this. If an athlete feels too restrained post show by their coach, they will leave and they'll just go and do what they want.
Yeah.
Or if you give them too much balance, they're potentially impacting their ability to progress as an athlete in further phases. So post show is very much just riding along that fine line, uh,
Yeah.
trying to meet in the middle of meeting the best of both worlds.
And I think it's very much coaching, like I said, that athlete as an individual as well,
Yeah,
because everyone is going to react in post show very differently. And for some people that they're going to find it really easy to just get straight back on plan and eat their food. They're not really worried
yeah,
about going out for meals with family or whatever. It doesn't bother them. But for
yeah.
some people, like that's a really big deal, and they're going to really struggle with.
Yeah. I had like to give an example of so like one of my clients last year, and it got to the point where like he just wouldn't have off plans. Like
Yeah,
after every show, I was like, just have a meal off, and then we've got like 3 weeks to the next show. Just didn't bother. When it come to his last show, I think I messaged his partner. I was like, please buy him a Domino's tonight. It's actually winding me up that he's never eaten like just have your off plan meal for one show. Um, some people just do not care for food and they can just post show absolutely fine. You've got to work with the individual you've got.
yeah,
Everyone lives different lives and has different things. I know for me personally, post show, I'm relatively relaxed.
yeah,
I'm not an idiot, but I will do a few bits here, there, and you get what I mean socially. So I'm not going to expect an athlete to do anything different to what I would do. I don't. I've heard of coaches that have like don't let their athletes have an off plan meal until 6 weeks post show.
yeah. I don't like that. For me, and like where I really struggled for myself, and like, and this is kind of my thing, but I'm happy to share it. Is like that when I had a really bad post show, it's because I felt too restricted, and it
I was
wasn't
literally
actually my
about to say that as well. Yeah,
yeah, it wasn't my coach that was putting that restriction on me. It was me, and the person that I was seeing at the time was so restricted that I felt like if I went, and I remember I sat somewhere, someone offered me like those munchy chocolates.
yeah,
Someone offered me like a little munchy chocolate, and I felt so guilty for eating that.
yeah,
I felt guilt. That's fucking stupid. But at the time, like that's how I felt, and I put all this pressure on myself that I couldn't eat anything off plan. That I ended up just binging on stuff all the time, like uncontrollably.
yeah. It,
And then
it does do that.
water retention, like it was awful. Like it was awful, and I literally rang my coach. I was like, "I'm never doing this again. I'm never competing again. Like I feel so depressed.
Yeah,
I'm in like my body's in pain. Like everything is awful." And he
yeah,
did everything he could, but it was me. I'd never ever blame him for that because he's a fantastic coach. I still work with him now. But in my head, that's where I put myself, and I think there are coaches out there that put that on you.
yeah.
And like
I
I
know you're a
never
coach, and I know I really like it. You're with Von, right?
done before, yeah,
I really like Von. He's great, and I know he doesn't put too much pressure on athletes post show. I think he's probably quite similar to us, right? He's quite relaxed.
Yeah.
And I do think over restricting your athletes post show will make them worse.
Yeah. It
Very
made,
much. I get check-ins with people post show, and they'll put on their check-in sheet. I had a few biscuits today. Here, I don't care.
yeah.
I don't care. Have a custard cream, like you're fine. As long as you're not like up 6 pounds a week, I
Yeah.
don't care. Like I want your body weight coming up. I want it coming up in a controlled way. As long as I'm not seeing spikes that I'm looking at and going like this is eating away at our next improvement phase,
Mm.
then if you can get away with it, like if you can get away with post show and having a few little bits here and there, but I think it's all about being mindful of it, right?
Yeah.
There's there's having a few little treats, and then there is just pushing the boat out. Like you don't need a Five Guys every day.
No.
I think it's finding that balance. Like my first post show, I didn't even do the show, that prep that I pulled out of, right?
Yeah.
I think I went from 150 pounds to back above 200 pounds in about 4.5 weeks. About
Yeah.
50 pounds up in 4.5 weeks. Didn't actually look terrible, felt horrible. I remember going for a walk and I used to have to stop like every 10 minutes because my calves had so much fluid retention in them. Like, when your sock is like causing that ring around your ankles. Yeah, it's just killing me.
Horrible. Like I remember I had like this I was like working in the gym at the time. I had like this old boy that had Parkinson's, lovely guy. I used to have to help him like on the bike and help put his feet in the things. And I remember I couldn't get down to help him put his feet in the pedals properly because kneeling down, my legs were so swollen. And I
Yeah,
get home and just want to lie on my bed because my legs hurt so
yeah,
much. Like that's not good.
yeah. One of the things that I do want to address about post show for females
Yeah.
is when you're pushing their food up post show, what I think a lot of people get wrong is not actually thinking through the food choices you're putting back in. So one of the big things post show is restoring hormonal function, right? The immediate things I do is there's a certain list of supplements that I'll use, a very high quality omega, some multivitamin stuff like that. Because all of these things essentially created deficiencies of in prep, where
Yeah.
you've been so like, don't get me wrong, like in every phase possible, we try and keep nutritional input as good as possible. When your athletes are like sub 1,000 calories at points, which isn't uncommon for bikini, it happens.
All the time.
There is no way you're going to tick off all of those boxes. So to restore hormonal function, you need to be getting those back in with the food groups you're picking and stuff like that. Now, what I see a lot of people do is they'll start just throwing foods back into their clients' diets that their clients want to eat. So like loads of squares bars, this and that. Where's the oily fish? Where's the structured veg intake of certain, like not just have some veg with this meal, working out where we're picking up certain vitamins and minerals from, and making sure omegas are back in a good place, making sure dietary fats like the split of mono, poly, and saturated fats are in a good spot. Like I think that's often really overlooked of actual like not just getting calories back up, but getting nutritional input back up.
Yeah, and I think like for me, like I've had so many girls come over to me because their coaches don't understand hormones and post show they
Yeah,
are fucked. And they
yeah,
don't have their cycle, they can't get it back, they can't get it back. And I'm like, because you're eating fucking shit.
yeah,
Eating and your body's so, because of the hormones are so out of
yeah,
whack. Your body's so out of whack. So you're putting on weight really quickly. Your coach is then like, oh no, you're getting fat, pulls down your calories, puts you back in a diet. And it's like, you kind of need to get a little bit fat to get your
yeah.
hormones. That's how it works. So you need to put weight on as a female. And like for me, the first goal post show is to get your hormones in a good place.
Yeah. I don't start off season with my female athletes until we've got some regularity back and homeostasis from a hormonal standpoint. There's absolutely no point going into an off season if your hormones aren't in a good spot.
No, and it actually really pisses me off because they're like, oh, like post show is the best time to grow.
No, it's not.
Time to grow when I've got fucking zero hormones.
Yeah, the only like for guys it is because you just like with guys you can just keep your drugs in and
Yeah.
keep going. Females don't have that luxury. So like I've got a couple of girls who are post show right now, and they're about 5 6 weeks in. Their off seasons don't start for another 6 weeks at least until blood work's done and all of that's settled. And one of them's assisted. So until we've got like tapered her thyroid, exogenous thyroid input out, and make sure that all of that's firing. Like I'm not putting someone in off season until we've re-established the hormonal function and thyroid function, and without needing it to be supported exogenously. Like there's no need. Like, and what's the rush? Why do you need to start off season the day after? Like the end of prep, like systemic fatigue is so high, and one like growing muscle is a very energy demanding process, especially when you've got some muscle already. Your body's not really looking to grow more because what's like from a survival standpoint, what is the actual point of having more muscle? You don't really need it. So if your body's in a high fatigue state, is it really going to effectively do an extremely energy demanding job of growing new tissue? Absolutely not. So you're just going to get soft really, really fast if you push food, except like as if you're in an improvement phase. You're not.
Yeah, and also it's like like your body's shut down your like ovulation and hormonal process there because that kind of like you said that survival thing is like okay,
Yeah.
we're shut down from our body to
Yeah.
keep going. Like we don't need to reproduce right now because we're not in a thing to reproduce. So
Yeah.
so if your body shut that down, how's it then going to be like, well, I know we don't want to make babies at the moment, but what we do want to make is more muscle. Like
Yeah.
just think of it like that. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. So
I've seen it before as well. And and this sort of opened my eyes to it is just as much prep is stressful to the body, so is off season. Not
yeah,
to the same degree, but it is. So if you're stressing from high stress, like swapping from a high stress of prep to high stress of off season, you're not giving it the opportunity. So I've seen someone come out of prep and they didn't restore hormonal functions straight into off season pushing food.
yeah,
And until they pulled their food back a little bit and sort of re-established routine of eating and stuff like that, then their cycle come back.
yeah,
Finally, actually taken away. Like you've gone from stress to actually now coming back to homeostasis and letting your body sit in a certain position.
yeah,
Now it's starting to boot up and things are starting to work.
yeah. What I do want to say there, because I don't want people to get that wrong end of the stick. When you say like pushing food in off season, you still want to push food post show. Like you,
Yes, yes. So you want to get food up. The way I do it, I have 4 weeks or so of pushing food up. So I'm going to use Leah for example because she doesn't mind. I've just recently prepped her. Her lowest prep calories are about 900 a day.
yeah,
We're now sitting at 2,300 a day.
yeah,
And now we've just, as we've built those up, now for the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're just going to sit there as a maintenance set point. Let our body weight hold. Like 2,300 calories is more than sufficient.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So she's 50 kilos. So relative to 50 kilos, 2,300 calories. I think it's like, oh,
Post show,
sorry, what was that?
like 6 weeks post show.
Yes, yes. So we had about 4 weeks of letting calories come up. Now, well, 5 weeks actually. And no, so she's, no, actually 4 weeks post show. So we've
Sorry.
done 4 weeks of coming up, yeah. Um, and now we're just letting that body weight stabilize, letting that calorie set point stabilize, and just sort of just giving her body a position where she's just still for a while, not trying to aim in any direction, just letting it sit and just settle.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. I just wanted to touch on that because I know some people are like, oh, you only want to push food like 100 calories up post show, and
No.
that's not what we're saying here. Like, push it up, get your
Yeah.
horse right, but you don't want to be pushing like crazy.
Yeah.
You are just getting fat then. I don't know if you do this as well. I actually bring their training down post show as well.
Yep. And I usually try and start their reverse diets while they're in prep. So Leah's reverse diet started the day after her first show. So coming into peak week was on about 900 calories and then peaked. And then between her second and third show, we worked her daily baseline calories up to 2,000 calories a day. So it was her reverse diet started and she was just hitting shows along that reverse diet.
Yeah,
So we've already started to establish that reverse diet in an environment where she couldn't really be having off plans because she still had more shows. So we're
mm,
already starting to drop off some of that fatigue. We're starting to work our way out of the woods before we've even finished prep.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. I guess that also though is show dependent as well, though, isn't it? Like if you've got someone that's done a regional but then is doing the British, for example, they're going to need to come and type for the British. So it might be a bit different, but
Yeah, it depends on what the athlete's looking for, right? So for
yeah,
me, my first show was very much a case of condition was there, but we just needed more fullness. So that gave us the opportunity that we could just keep feeding throughout shows. And she just got fuller and it actually brought through more detail because it was creating more skin pressure with like
yeah.
the fullness of tissue coming through. So that can't work in every environment. Like if you're hitting your regional at 90%, and you need to be at 100% for your qualifier or like your pro qualifier or whatever you've got coming up, then you don't have the luxury of being able to do that.
No, that is if you are. That's obviously a really good way of doing it. Um, but yeah, I think hormones is important, and I'm glad you've gone through that bit. And it's carbs as well as fats. This is the other thing that I see people get really wrong is they're just like, oh, we've just added loads of fats in.
I think people really overestimate how much fat you need and underestimate where the fat's coming from.
Yeah,
People be like, yeah, I'm on 80, like you see films, I'm on 80 grams of fat post show. And it's like Biscoff spread.
yeah, yeah.
It's not going to help restore hormonal function, is it?
Right. It's,
Like, it's just silly.
Biscoff spread is great, but it's
Yeah.
I really like chia seeds and nuts and avocado.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like, it's almost like the 80-20 rule, isn't it? Like 80% of the, like, I know everyone uses that phrase as like the lifestyle client stuff, but like, even for this, it works. It's like, get at least 80% of your food from stuff places that really does help. And then if you want a little bit of Biscoff spread on one of your meals, that's fine. But I've seen like some like reverse diets where it's like 90% of the fat sources are just things that they enjoy rather than actually are going to be productive. So it's not about just getting those fats up, it's about getting the right fats in.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, and it shouldn't be taking fucking months and years to get your cycle back either.
No, I mean it's obviously person dependent. Some people really do struggle post show, don't they? But and then you get some of those like wacky athletes who don't even lose theirs.
No, yeah. You just get a bit of both, don't you? But I think what I mean is obviously if you've got an athlete that's got like really bad PCOS or
Yeah.
endometrial or issues like that, they are going to take a lot longer. But if you don't and you just have a normal cycle, these coaches that is letting people go for like years without having a period and telling them like that's normal,
No,
that's not okay.
but it should be worrying. The longer those processes are shut down for, the harder and or the more damage that's going to do.
Yeah, massively. But I think the biggest thing is kind of like we said, it's support post show and it's eating the right foods.
Yeah,
And I think sometimes it is listening to your body as well, and not in a way that's just like, I want to eat cake.
yeah,
Sometimes if you're craving a certain food post show, I always think like, what is in that food? Like, why am I craving
yeah.
post show? Because it's got like really high sugars and it's got really high fats. And when you actually strip it back and think of it, like that is obviously why you're going to be craving it.
Everything when it comes down to craving. So I've read a really cool book. I'll send it to you after actually, if you haven't read it. It's called The Hungry Brain, and it sort of explains why we crave certain types of food, and it is all down to like that. It's we're not craving the food itself, we're craving what's within that. So it's
Yeah,
usually high fat, high sodium
yeah,
are the two that we really crave, and it's usually like you can somewhat remove those cravings by actually just like putting it in the diet itself.
yeah. Not the cake, like what you're craving within that cake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, it's not bad to have a bit of cake post show.
Oh no,
Like,
no,
it's like absolutely who doesn't? It's very rare, and I think this is another thing that gets misconstrued a lot, isn't it? That when on social media, you're only going to see the good.
yeah,
Coaches are only going to post their athletes who are doing amazing post show.
yeah,
Athletes are only going to post the good days of their post show. Now, I'm sure you was aware, my client Leah got absolutely rinsed for posting an actual just honest day of her post show. We've
that-
all we've
yeah,
all done this. I've like I think every athlete I work with has done something similar to that. She just got a lot of stick from it because she actually posted it. But when it actually comes to it, that's happening a lot. It's just people aren't posting it, and it's setting up this setup online where you're thinking everyone's doing perfect and no one's having that slice of cake, no one's doing this, but deep down everyone's doing a little bit of something post show that they're not showing.
They are, and I think that it's the lies that they then put on social media that's like, I never missed a beat, post show, didn't eat anything off plan, blah blah blah. And you're like, sorted down Chinese takeaway last night, love. You know,
Yeah.
that's
And this gets in your athlete's head, right? Like Leah's doing really well post show, and it's like because there's all these other athletes like only posting the good bits, and it's not only her. Like other athletes of mine are like, "Oh, have you seen this person? How their post show is?" And it's not. It's not always what it seems, and I think it sets the precedent
yeah.
that it has to be perfect, and it's just never. It's not the case.
And I would also look at the flip side of like, okay, if someone hasn't put on in any weight post show and they haven't had anything off plan post show, I would actually look at that as like something is wrong in that way.
You're
As
still in prep. If you haven't put on weight post show, you're still in prep. You're
yeah,
not doing another show.
yeah. And I think then, but it's kind of, and I don't think it is as much the last kind of year or two, but before that was very much like you only want to put on like a tiny bit of weight over the weeks, and it was almost like this competition who could put on the least post show,
Yeah,
and you're like, but that is like this real bad control element then that
yeah,
you are going to kind of struggle with. And as much as people are like, oh, this like binging post show is like an eating disorder,
yeah,
fucking shit. So is that control
yeah,
pressure and not eating anything.
yeah. The
Just
dial works both ways.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, okay, let's go on to something a little bit different then. So, like I said to you before, you are someone that I would talk about PEDs on here with. There's some people that I just don't agree with what they say.
Yeah.
Um, so a little bit about like maybe considerations as a female if you were thinking, I might want to take drugs. What would you kind of, where would you sit with your athletes if they came to you and said, I think I want to go assisted, sorry.
So if one of my athletes said to me, and this is to be honest, male or female, for this first point, and I'll venture into the female side after. If I look back at their 6 weeks of coaching and there's issues with adherence with diet and training, no,
Yeah,
you can't nail the basics. You're not taking drugs. Then with females, it is very much a case of needs must. So I've only ever had one female athlete who's used PEDs in the off season for a short time.
oh yeah,
Every other female that I've worked with doesn't use PEDs in the off season. Um, the only reason we actually did in that off season was more we had the conversation of we'll trial it here for a few weeks so that when prep comes around, you know whether this actually agrees with you rather than doing it in prep and then it being like, oh, I actually really don't like this.
yeah.
So
What
it
was
was more of a test run.
that? Are you happy to talk about that?
What was that?
What was that you used in the off season that you were?
Some very low dose Anavar.
Okay, yeah.
It was for a 4 week period at like 5 milligrams a day. It honestly, I wasn't actually looking to get much out of it.
Mhm.
It was more of a trial run for the individual of like, do you
Yeah,
actually agree with using this? So it was more like collecting data, but I wasn't like looking to like try like as a female, you can grow a lot of muscle naturally. You don't need to. And then when I think it comes to prep, I think one of the things that I see way too often is the duration. Like I feel like sometimes people, when they've got back-to-back shows and then they're adding more shows on, they almost forget like the duration of time you've been exposed to these androgens.
yeah,
Like, and another one that I picked up on recently is the ignorance of like people ignoring ester lengths and half lives.
yeah.
So we're seeing primobolan become more prevalent in female usage recently over the last few years. Now,
Wise. I think more women are taking more drugs.
yeah, so I don't use primo with anyone, and there is a reason why I don't. I don't think many people think of this reason. So, what when you're using something like Anavar, right, and that's usually like the go-to on prep for a female, right, when it comes to anabolics. Um, Say if you're using Anavar for 6 weeks, you seize it at the end of week 6, which is like the longest I would push a cycle. It's usually 4 to 6 around the shows. Within a day, that's pretty much cleared from your system. So that's that 6 week duration there. Now, what people do, what I don't agree with, is if they use Primo as an alternative. They'll
Yeah.
use like primobolan and anthate from day one, and they'll almost replicate what they did with the Anavar and run it for 6 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
But it's an enanthate. You've got the clearance time after. So you're almost looking at 8 weeks. And what the issue I see with Primo is as well is say you get to week 3 of the cycle and your client comes back to you and goes, I'm noticing some signs of virilization, like I need to pull this. If they
Yeah.
do that with Anavar, you pull it, it's out the next day. With Primo, strapping, you've got 2 more weeks of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like those symptoms are going to continue to develop while that drug clears. So that's why, and people can disagree with me on this one, but I wouldn't use Primo for a female because because of the clearance times. If you come around and say, look, this just isn't agreeing with me and I'm getting side effects, you've got 2 more weeks being exposed to that.
Yeah.
Like knowing virilization, a lot of it's irreversible. That's another 2 weeks of that side effect to develop before you can actually get it out of your system.
Yeah. And I guess this is kind of person dependent as well, because some people don't.
Some people don't care. Like if you're looking at, say, a European women's bodybuilding competitor, if you were going, say, we did it, if you go to the, so like me and a friend of mine were speaking to this woman, a female bodybuilder, in Alicante.
Yeah.
Asked, as you always do at shows, what drugs are you using? And it was like a pharmacy list, and she didn't give a shit.
No.
So that's fine. Like use what you. She couldn't care less about the side effects. She just wanted to be humongous.
Yeah.
So it's fine. She can justify that usage because she doesn't care.
But I think that's the issue. I think a lot of women do care, but they're not told what the potential side effects are and what they would be
Yeah,
but what they'd be like, okay, I can live with that. And what they would be like, actually, like, I can't,
yeah,
I don't want that, you know?
yeah. And what I think it happens as well is when you get into bodybuilding, and this is for females, right? You see that everyone's using this, and you may not care as much now about your femininity, but in 10 years when bodybuilding's done, you may care more.
Yeah,
It's very easy to be in the moment and go, I don't give a shit.
yeah, yeah.
If I get some side effects, that's fine because I want to turn pro. What happens in 10 years' time when like you look back and go, like your voice is deepened or stuff like that, and it's irreversible? Think about you. I think sometimes you've got to take a step back and think of like, in 10 years' time, is me going to agree with these decisions?
Yeah,
It's not
100.
done.
And I think the other issue for me is that there are so many men and women, to be fair, that are told, oh, you've got so much potential, you can turn pro, you can there's thousands of people that are told they're going to turn pro every day. About one of them will. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many people.
Even so, like, what does turning pro? You don't turn pro and wake up the next day and your life's different.
No, no, 100%. But what I mean is like they're told this
Yeah.
narrative. So they throw everything into it. They go, okay, well, actually, I then need to take these drugs and then this is going to happen. And they're kind of then living in this like little fairy tale world that actually is never going to happen anyway.
And it just breaks down their perception of what's right and wrong. If
Yeah, 100%.
I wouldn't do this, but because my coach said I'm going to turn pro, I can justify doing this now.
Yeah. But most of the time they're not gonna, it's a way.
I'll make a statement here, and this is mainly not for like wellness and stuff like that. For bikini, this might sound rogue, and I don't expect people to agree with me. Turning pro is one thing, being a good pro is another, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think if you can't, in bikini, you can't turn pro naturally, then your ceiling of where you can go as a pro is probably a lot lower than justifying the drug use. Now, like, so if your coach promises you, right, if you take these drugs, you can turn pro. So
Yeah.
when you turn pro, what happens? Because you've exhausted those options already. So,
Mm.
like, if you can turn pro naturally and then you've got those options to use once you're pro, then you can sort of step up to the top of the pro ranks. But like, I couldn't justify sitting there with an athlete. It's different for guys because guys you have to. It's it's terrible, but for guys you have to take a lot of drugs to do well,
Yeah.
unless you're a genetic freak. With bikini athletes, you don't
See,
you
I
don't
would
do.
I think it depends who you're turning pro with. I do think that with the IFBB, I think it'd be very difficult to turn pro naturally now. Like I do think those girls, like when you look at like them, like they are
Yeah,
jacked.
but you do see it happen.
You do,
Yeah.
just not very often.
No, but like some of the cycles you hear that are run for like card hunting, I just couldn't justify putting it on someone. Like, I don't want to ever be the coach that someone turns around to and goes, "That's the guy that ruined my femininity."
Yeah, 100%.
I
Yeah.
don't want that on my conscience ever.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Um, but it's, and also for me, it's young girls that are doing it.
Yeah, because that makes it worse because I think you can be even. I'm not saying there's like you can get some really mature younger people and like, but I do think sometimes they can be a little bit more blind to what damage they're doing for their future self. I think as you get older as an individual, you start to think a little bit more in the future, don't you? Just as you grow up.
I
Uh,
think I've always said this, but I look at my decisions when I was in my early 20s and they weren't good ones because I didn't care.
yeah, exactly. Like I full disclosure, I started taking PEDs at 17.
That's,
Now looking back, I'm like, why? At
yeah,
the point, I didn't care. I
yeah,
couldn't care less. And I think a lot of people are doing that now. Um, and coaches are justifying it for them and giving them further justification that it's the right choice.
yeah. I think if you're a junior athlete, like you shouldn't be touching it.
No.
Because I think as well, you've got so much room to grow naturally at that young age. I think as you get a
Yeah.
bit older, I know now that I don't grow like I used to. And that's fine because I'm a bit older and I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
But I didn't take my first
Um,
with
as-
antibiotics at 28. So I
I
was
think
older.
PEDs as well, right? There's a lot of PEDs you can use that don't viralize, that I think people aren't actually utilizing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's a lot of them, like, disclaimer, I've actually never had anyone use this, but like low dose growth hormone, or metformin or injectable L-carnitine, all of these things you could use instead of using something like anabolic, right? But
Yep.
I think it's very easy that I think it's just like it's usually the anabolic route that people go down. Like, oh, use Primo. Why not do a little bit of injectable L-carnitine or some metformin and stuff like that? There's like those introductory cycles, and it's just a thought, just something that popped in my head.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I'm not really a fan of metformin.
No,
No, because it lowers your LH levels.
yeah, I haven't used it with any females unless like I actually haven't used it. No, but like it's the sort of point I'm trying to put across is there is like more tools available than just
Yeah.
anabolics.
Yeah, I've used Psalms before, which I know people are very like Marmite about. Some people agree with them, some people don't.
I
Um,
haven't used them to like I was very much under the impression it was a no, but then I'm never going to sit there and say no to something I haven't actually tried.
yeah, so Ostarine, I think it depends on the time as well. Like obviously some are probably going to be more of a no than others.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I've used Ostarine, I've had clients use it. I think it's very like mixed bag of whether you work well on it or don't. Like some people will
yeah,
get a really good response, some people like you won't really see much of a difference. But again, the side effects there aren't the same as like what they are with Anavar.
yeah. I think just being, I think we're both sort of going on the same lines of being open to other avenues.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, the thing is, like you said, it's understanding what could happen
Yeah,
and not saying it's almost like you've got to think of it as like this will happen to me because I think
yeah,
so many times we're like, because I think we're very conditioned to it. Like I'm pretty sure on a a packet of paracetamol it says could cause death.
yeah,
We don't then go, oh shit, I better not take paracetamol because I might die. But when it comes to, anabolics, when people say it could cause hair
yeah.
loss, it could cause voice deepening, it could cause this, that, and the other. I think the where we're conditioned to think about paracetamol,
Mm.
we're thinking of that the same way, whereas actually we need to think about it as like that is very high chance that could happen.
I think as humans, we always are under the impression it won't happen to us.
Yeah.
Do you get that? It's like, oh, it can do that, but it won't do it to me. No, I'll
Yeah.
be. Yeah, like I think that's what people tend to do. And I also think we subconsciously turn a blind eye to something and convince ourselves to do it.
Yeah,
What we want, the positives of it, and we'll do whatever we can to justify the negatives. And an
yeah,
easy way of justifying that is going, it's not going to happen to me. I'll be fine.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'll be sweet. Yeah. Um, and it's all well and good until it bites back. And then you're like, oh, actually, it might happen to me. And unfortunately, for female PED usage, it's higher risk because, for example, with males, pretty much everything that happens to us negatively with PEDs we can reverse.
Yeah. And
Females don't have that luxury, and unluckily,
it's some of it, the male, it's just aging you. So like you might just go a bit grey or a bit bald, but that kind of would happen
yeah,
anyway.
go to Turkey, get a hair transplant fixed. Like it's yeah, we can just fix it. Like that's probably the biggest one that men are scared of, right? I don't want to lose my hairline, and even that you can fix.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think again, male or female, a lot of the issues with men is that they push too much. And
I've done some silly stuff personally. I didn't look better for it. It gets to a point where you just drive up so much oxidative stress on your body. Like full disclosure, I've run over 1,000 milligrams of test a week at points. I did it at one point just to. My justification for it was just want to see what it's like.
and what was it like?
Horrible,
Ah, surprising.
genuinely horrible. Sleep was terrible. Um, just sweating constantly.
Yeah.
Training was going really well, but like my physique didn't really progress because it was just so stressed under that much. Like I've grown a lot better on a lot less drugs.
Yeah, and I think as well, and I might be completely wrong here, but like when you're trained to that point and you're putting on that mass so quickly, your joints aren't going to take that very easily.
Put it this way, during that period of me doing that is when I tore my pec.
Yeah, because you're
So yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah,
aren't recovering properly, and then when you tear your pec, like you've got to get surgery very quickly for that. If
yeah,
you don't, that's an imbalance on stage straight away.
yeah. My so I never got surgery because mine was grade one, but my right pec now is missing a lot of fullness in the upper, and I'm having to like learn to pose to hide that. Uh,
Yeah,
exactly as you say, it's an imbalance now that's caused because my ability to contract that upper pec is just not there because the fibers aren't attached.
yeah, yeah. But it is, and that's another thing I think post show, I think people get wrong is then they want to push hard post show.
Yeah,
But me, and I know I'm different than some people in the fact that my body is generally quite fucked anyway. My joints are, it hurts to walk.
yeah.
I'm not hitting PBs on leg press and hack squats and whatever post show because my body is falling apart. There's no way my body could take that.
Your body convinces you. So in post show, I've noticed, and it's you've got all the energy from the food back. It also almost gives you like the false illusion that you're okay. So you
Yeah,
go in, and you're like, I'm full of energy today. You know what I'm going to do? I haven't done it for months. I'm going to throw an RDL. You do it, and your lower back goes. You're like, shit. Maybe
yeah.
I'm not actually as good as I thought I was.
No, it is. It's. I think that is another thing that people don't realize post show is your body's a little bit fucked, and maybe we should get your joints feeling good before we try and do
Yeah.
loads of silly things again.
It's not
What we're
really
gonna
slow
do,
down, is it? Sorry, I'll let go on.
sorry, is gonna go. Did you have anything else to put here?
No, I'm pretty much covered on that. Yeah.
Cool. We're gonna go into. I've only had a few in the question box. I think they're all just general icks in the gym because I always find this quite good fun. So these are just. Oh, actually, no. One of them was a question. Let's do the question first. I think we. Oh, actually, we haven't done this. So, how to deal with weight gain in bodybuilding phases positively?
Hard, isn't it? It's hard to answer because without the context of the person. But
Yeah.
for me, I will try and. So I assume this person's probably finished a diet and they're now in a growing phase or something like that. That's why they're trying to put body weight on, I would imagine. Sorry, what was that?
I'm not sure, to be honest, where she is, but it's a female.
guessing that. What I would try and do is in a dieting phase, you set your expectations of like what's been a good week based on where those scales move, right?
Yeah.
Try and shift your focus. The new metrics I would like whoever that is to focus on is what numbers are moving forward in your training.
Yeah.
Start to shift your focus from what your scale weight's doing to what your training's doing at that point. Now, post diet, you are always going to feel anxious seeing your scale weight move up because you've just worked so hard to get that to come down. Um, and I think just be patient with it. I think it does just take a few months after a diet to get used to that body weight moving up. And it will feel alien and it will give you some anxiety, but that will die. I'm sure you get that, don't you? The further you go into off season, the more open you are. And it gets to the point where you actually start to celebrate body weight going up at some points of off season. You're like, yes, a new high.
I think for me, I don't know, I guess I have had times I have struggled a little bit with body weight in the off season. Um, but never overly. But I think part of it is I don't surround myself with bodybuilders all the time. Like my close friend circle are my friends from school. Like they don't
It's great
compete.
to have a break from it, you know?
They don't. A couple of them train, a couple of them don't. If they do go to the gym, they do little bits and pieces. They're not. They're not competitors. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I'm not surrounded by myself by people that are constantly like, when are you next competing? Are you dieting? Blah 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 blah, and focused on that and putting that on you.
yeah,
Part of me is just always a normal person,
yeah,
and I'm constantly surrounded by different body types, so I don't feel quite so uncomfortable then because
yeah,
I'm around normal people a lot.
yeah,
And I think that's one thing that we don't do is we constantly compare ourselves to people that are on stage,
yeah,
and you're not on stage all the time. And when you pull yourself back and you put yourself just in normal life,
yeah,
actually, like when you think you're getting fat, putting on weight, you're
yeah.
not at all. And
Sometimes, you know what I do with some of my clients, especially people that I've had from like years,
yeah,
when they talk about like how they look, especially in a post-show phase, I'll
yeah,
get the current check-in that they're not happy with, and I'll go all the way back to when they started with me and put them together. And I'll go
yeah,
like, which one do you want to look like more? And
yeah,
then you just got to pull them back to reality sometimes. You've just
yeah.
got to pull back to reality and go, oh shit. No, I actually prefer how I look now than I did 3 years ago.
Yeah. And do you know what else is weird, right? Because I was thinking about this in the gym the other day. We sit there and we think like we've got this thing in our head that we always want to be stage lean. When I'm stage lean is when I get the comments on mainly TikTok, to be honest, like you look fucking disgusting. Why would you want to look like that? Like, everyone's probably seen it, and I'm like, okay, cool. I don't give a shit. When I'm in off season, like I never get negative comments from people.
No,
And that's the weird thing, but in our head, it's like that
yeah,
body is the one that we're going to be judged on, and people are going to tell us we look
yeah.
disgusting.
Do you
Whereas
know
that
what?
is,
I find it hard to understand this one a little bit because I've really never had an issue with like I actually feel more self-conscious when I'm lean because I feel small.
yeah, yeah,
I prefer how I feel day to day in off season because I've got fullness and that for me, I think that's because I've always been a smaller bodybuilder. I
Hmm.
find the dieting side, and I think with guys actually, I see that a lot more. Is it actually works in the opposite? That they're a lot more self conscious when they're dieting and when they're small and when they're flat,
yeah.
to where I think females are more inclined to be on the other side of it's when scale weight starts to come up. I think there's a difference there.
Independent females though, because I like how I look up until about 8 weeks out, maybe
Mhm.
a little bit, but then I start to feel really like skinny. And as a woman, I'm like, I've got no boobs now, I've got no bum, I don't feel sexy. I,
Yeah,
woman, I just look in the mirror and I look like a little boy. Do you know what I mean? And
I
I,
I think for all of us though, like around that 8 to 10 week out mark,
mm,
I would say is how my favorite look of myself.
yeah,
I've still got some muscle. I still can function as a human. I'm lean enough to be like, oh, you could walk down the beach and look
yeah,
pretty.
yeah.
Yeah. but you don't haven't gone to like full crackhead territory.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah,
think it's that. I think when you get to that point, almost then you remember like what you feel like to be, and almost sometimes you need to remember that
yeah,
actually, like when I am really lean and I look back and think, oh, I want to be that lean again. Actually, like I don't want to look like a little boy with no energy.
yeah. I think it's always easy to want what you haven't got at the time. In off season, you want to be lean. When you're lean, you even when you're in prep, you're like, oh, I can't wait for off season. Can't wait to put on muscle and feel strong again. I think you just need to bring yourself back and go, 6 months ago, I wanted to be where I am right now. So
Yeah,
just enjoy it because that other phase is going to come back around one day.
yeah,
But
100%.
don't wish away what phase you're in to be somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. Okay, I think that was the only question. Right, these are all icks in the gym or whatever. So, men who don't train legs, do we agree this is an ick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an
I
ick.
mean, like even men's physique guys train legs.
We should train legs, yeah. I
Yeah.
think should just
Yeah.
what we need to put in there.
Yeah. Come on, it's not that. Yeah. I don't think there's anything worse than like an extremely disproportional body. I think everyone should just train everything to
Yeah, I think they should too, but it's a bit of an ick, I think.
yeah.
Fake expert coaches, you're not a doctor.
Yep. I can agree with this. But it's not really an in-gym ick, but that's just an ick, isn't it, in general?
Yeah,
Um, the one that really grinds my gears at the minute is coaches who are like almost diagnosing their clients with PCOS and stuff like that. You know,
oh,
where they're getting like, I think a lot of coaches right now are crossing the line with medical advice.
yeah,
We are not health professionals. We are online coaches. We need to stay in our lane. And I'm seeing way too much content put out about this is how you manage PCOS or this is how you manage blah, blah, blah. We're not, it's not our job.
yeah. And I think it's a hard one because I don't know if you find this, but like for me, certainly, a lot of the girls are going to the doctor, they
Yeah.
hormone issues because menopause, PCS, whatever. And you're like, go to doctors, get your bloods run, see what they say.
Yeah.
They go to the doctors, and the doctors come out with some fucking weird shit.
Mhm.
I've had girls be told that females don't produce testosterone. That's why they don't have any testosterone in there when they've had their bloods run. And you're like, well, that's not right.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like stuck
Yeah.
at the spot of saying like, well, what the doctors told you I know isn't right, but equally, I'm not an expert in this.
Yeah.
So it's difficult and it is you are kind of walking the line sometimes, but like you said, it's when they then claim to be an expert and they're claiming to fix this and fix that. And because there are courses out there, I know there's courses out there because I've done courses on female
Yeah.
health. Most of these people haven't, and they're just going, "Oh, now I'm an expert on this," or not even that as well. It's when you
It's
get
like
like,
they've probably listened to a podcast on it.
yeah,
That's where the extent of their expertise has come to. Like, I had it the other day. So I run an educational group chat, right? And
yeah,
I do a video a week in there, and the team, the people in there vote and go, this is what they want it on. Now, one of them, a female, put forward and said, "Can you do a video going over PCOS?"
mm,
I said, "No." I said, I'm not an expert in that field. Like, I
yeah,
know enough that I can help my clients who have it, but I'm not going to sit there in an educational way and put out info and say, this is how you do it. This is no, that's way out of my scope. It
yeah,
doesn't make me a worse coach for doing that. That is me staying in my lane as a professional. As a coach, I'm not a doctor to sit on there and post it to 70 people in a group chat saying, this is how you do this with PCOS. No, like, it's absolutely fine for me to say no.
Particularly not from a medical standpoint, but I just find sometimes it's laughable what people do claim to be experts in. They just
Yeah.
make up a thing. They're like, I'm an expert in coaching natural competitors. Well, it's just the fucking same as enhanced, but with no drugs.
I've got my own ick that's come from that.
Go
You
on
know,
then.
when a coach puts in their bio something like number one, something coach, who gave you that award? Who told you you're number one?
They just make it up. They're like, number one coach.
Yeah.
Uh, what the fuck?
Like,
I
where did you get that award from? Because I don't remember an award ceremony where you all sat there and you got that.
don't know.
Like, just
That never happened.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's like yeah, number one expert in this. what course have you done for that expertise then? Oh, none.
It's always the number one, as if there's like an award for it.
Yeah, yeah.
You've just put that in your bio, bro.
I like those bio, like anything in a bio, I just think like gross.
I'm pretty sure mine's just like coach, like just nice and simple. I don't need to do more than
My favorite is the one where they make up as well numbers that they're like 100 plus first places. I was
that.
like, put three people on stage.
Yeah,
How many shows have these guys done?
just absolutely
What?
pumping them through. Oh yeah, you get it all the time, don't you? Yeah. What's the next one?
Times. No control on exercise is just flinging it about, especially men doing cable flies.
That was very specific. I feel like she really doesn't like a certain man in her gym.
It's you. Someone
Yeah,
knows, so I know it's about you, Henry.
it's about me.
About you.
Um,
Here, actually, yeah.
but I do agree with that one. I have to really bite my tongue because I won't give people advice if they don't ask for it.
Yeah, 100%.
Sometimes I see things across the gym and I'm like, please stop doing that. Like, um, but then you've got to think like, do you know what the way I look at things, right? If that's how they want to do it, go for it. Like, just do your own thing, innit?
Don't moan when you then look like shit.
Yeah, yeah.
I I completely agree. My one is similar, but it's like hip thrusts. Like so many people just want to load up like the
Yeah.
whole bar and be like, my hip thrust is 500 kilograms. I'm like, great. And why do your glutes look shit then?
Yeah, you got marked down glutes last year, but you can hit for us 8 plates. Maybe if you could go on stage holding that on a whiteboard.
Yeah, I've got a white
Yeah.
here. I just
Yeah, 8 plate glute drive. Doesn't mean shit. And then when you watch them do it, it's like say like they get up to there and come down like no extension. Those glutes don't lock out once.
and they're using. I find a lot of girls hip thrust with their quads and the like momentum by
Yeah,
like throwing themselves back,
yeah,
not by their glutes.
yeah,
And I just think, and they just do it so fast. And so I'm like, or their lower back, they do that thing where they bend their back. And I think, oh,
yeah.
I like my lower back to work personally. But
I think I just see it a lot. It's just people throwing weight around. It really isn't gonna grow a physique.
no, no. But like you said, leave them to it. What's your biggest gimmick?
Crocs.
That's literally mine. I was going to say that.
Yeah. I'm so glad they got banned at Crayford.
Yeah,
They're banned. So good.
I cannot understand. Like, because I have like a bit of a thing about like where if your biggest stick is Crocs, you're probably the same as me, right? Your movement starts at your feet,
Yeah,
whatever you're doing. So if you're putting your feet on an unstable surface,
yeah.
Crocs, how are you then going to stabilize through the rest of your body?
No, it's not. The chain's gone. Like, um, another one of mine is when people go barefoot in the gym. Oh, that makes me feel sick. I don't like that one.
Right.
Like
What?
you see on a leg press and someone's like got their feet out. You're like, come on, you really don't need to do it in socks, man.
Okay.
That's it's more than enough. You don't need to be grounded any more than that. Like, just wear your socks, bro.
This gym.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Let me do a third. We'll go three. Um, people who smell in the gym, please. That's the worst.
No.
Yeah, shower before, shower after. We don't like it. It happens far too often.
I don't. I know people just, oh, I'm just gonna go to the gym and get sweaty, and you're like, yeah, but then I also think that do they not smell at home? Because sweat doesn't smell when you're sweating.
No, no, it's only like old sweat that smells.
Yeah, so if you smell, that tells me you haven't showered and the clothes that you're wearing are the clothes that you were doing cardio in like the day before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think my other one, this is really like, because this happened in Crayford and I was just like, this is, and I'm going to say this and you're going to be like, oh, I know who this is. But like posing in your boxes that you sweated in and then they're see-through.
Oh, we get that. That's I
I
can
don't see that
people.
personally.
Yeah,
That was quite an ick.
yeah. I think just posing on the gym floor in general, like If you just want to do a bit of like, especially in a gym that's not just a bodybuilding gym, so Crayford's quite a bit of both.
Yeah,
Don't make people feel uncomfortable and take your clothes off in the middle of the gym. Like it's normalized for us as bodybuilders,
it's
but
not.
like not everyone needs to see you unclothed in the gym.
I think especially if there is a posing room because you can take yourself over there.
Yeah.
I think if you're in a gym, because you do get bodybuilding gyms that just don't have a posing room,
Yeah.
and they're kind of like you can in this area.
Yeah,
Uh,
so that's justified. Like, they let us use a little bit upstairs in Crayford now. If someone's doing a posing lesson, we can use a bit of the glute room.
yeah,
Even I won't pose in there unless it's like if someone's training in there out of respect, I
yeah,
like them to finish up because no one needs to be on the hip thrust and see me there in my trunks posing in the mirror. Like it's they don't need to see that.
yeah. And I think for obviously we're bodybuilders, so we're kind of used to it. Like
Yeah,
I was talking to Vaughan the other day about, it and we were like, you get so desensitized to bodies.
yeah.
Like I see people like in very little clothes, like men in like little trunks and women in little bikinis all the time. And you kind of forget that that's not normal.
Mm.
And if I speak to my friends about it, they're like, what's this? All these men stood in there, those little pants. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's,
I had it when I was on prep a couple of years ago. Right, I was in the posing room at Crayford, and my friend come in with his girlfriend that I hadn't met before.
yeah,
They've come in, and I'm just standing there in my tracksuit. I've stripped down into my trunks, and I've never seen a more startled look on someone's face because she's not used to the bodybuilding world.
uh,
She's never seen it before, and she was just like, "I was like, it's so normal for us that we don't think twice about it. Like you see it, people are doing like check-ins in a Starbucks in the toilet.
yeah.
We just don't care. But like, yeah, the general public aren't used to seeing this.
No, whereas it is so normal for us. Like you'll be at a show and like you'll have like you'll have like a female friend, have a male friend, compete whatever. You give them a hug after, and it's so normal. Like even that, which for most people they'll be like, oh, they haven't got any clothes on. You're like, oh, yeah, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just so normal. Like it doesn't matter.
You know, it gets worse like the further out in Europe you go. Have you done? I went to a show in Budapest a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
We got to the venue, and there's like, so you know, there's venues, you've got like a corridor that goes into where you can sit and spectate. So anyone's using that corridor, right?
yeah,
There was a male coach with his female athlete. She was doing a rounds of posing for him, like completely naked in
yeah,
front of everyone. I was like, what is going on? Like, I've seen check-ins in public and people in underwear and stuff, but like,
yeah.
what on earth was that? I was taken aback. I was like, oh, they do it way worse than us over here.
Yeah, that I don't like, and I think it's been called out enough now that it doesn't happen
Yeah,
anymore in the UK. But it did used to happen that coaches would ask their female clients to check in naked because
yeah.
see more, check in topless because they can see more.
I mean, we won't name the name, but there was a very clear example of that a few years ago who got outed pretty badly for their behaviour on this. And I think we've got a very good culture in the UK of calling this stuff out, which is great to see that people are held accountable for these actions.
It does need to be because that is you.
Yeah,
You don't know, like that might have been like husband and wife, like
yeah,
oh, you see each other naked all the time, doesn't matter.
yeah,
Um, but if you're paying someone, they don't need to see you naked. Like you're not naked on stage, you don't need to be naked.
yeah.
That is my other ick is men when they get tanned and then they put their little sock on their willy and they do like a check-in in front of everyone else or put it on Instagram with their little willy in a
Did
sock.
you see the UK DFBA thing the other day?
No, what does that tend to
I was at Heart of England, right? And I saw the guy that got called out on Instagram for it. There were outside the venue in a car park that was like in a town centre, sock on, nothing else, posing. And UK DFBA had to put a statement out um, to ask men to stop just posing in a sock in public. You shouldn't have to ask that. It should just be general, like, you should know.
like I said, like there are certain things that you're like, okay, like we do bodybuilding, we know that this is weird to the general public, but that's normal to us.
Yeah,
I don't think wearing a sock on your willy is ever like, unless you're literally in that tanning booth, that
yeah,
doesn't need to be there. Like, why do you need to show people that?
yeah.
Like, I just think,
It takes 2 seconds to put your trunks on.
yeah, I don't understand it. I just don't. And the sock's not really covering, and it's all, oh no.
No. So yeah, that's not good. I think we need to we need to get rid of that one.
Police in socks.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
All good. Appreciate inviting me on.
Oh, it's been wicked. Thanks for coming on. If people are listening and they want to find you, where can they find you?
So I'm just all on Instagram. That's the only social media I have. So Readdy H underscore. So that's with two D's. READDYH underscore.
Yeah, fit. Are you?
I think that's it.
I don't know. You've just changed it recently, haven't
I
you?
think that's it. Hopefully, I've sent them to the right place.
I will write it in the comments of this description anyway. So if I can't find you, you're on
Yeah.
there. And you're obviously going to be at shows this year, competing yourself with
Yeah.
clients. So I'm sure people come and say hello as well. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. Drop us a comment. And we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.